for being here tonight. I am going to start by introducing our panel of guests. So let's see, to my left here we have John Paul Gutschke, who graduated in 2023. He majored in philosophy and has always been creative. He taught, okay, hold on, there's still, John, am I doing something wrong? Oh, still making noise, okay. He taught himself the art of filmmaking and has a passion for telling powerful stories with a camera. At 12, he made his first feature-length film, The Hobbit in Playmobil, a YouTube hit on his Brotherhood Films channel. In 2017, he won first place in EWTN's Cool to be Catholic video contest and appeared on their show, Life on the Rock. Afterwards, he recruited the Christendom community to be part of The Promise, a feature film he wrote and directed, which subsequently showed in Royal Cinemas here in town. He now works as a videographer and editor for LifeSite News, traveling both nationally and internationally to create videos and mini documentary films. So we're looking forward to hearing all about his adventures. All right, next we have Brian Hicks, who graduated he has no fans. I was gonna say, come on, everybody knows Brian. Everybody knows Brian. He majored in theology with a minor in math and works as a licensed public adjuster and claims support associate at ClaimStar Public Adjusting here in town. He assists in the daily operations of office tasks, handles consistent data entry, and regular calls with homeowners, along with having consistent communication with insurance companies. Although ClaimStar is not doing work for the church per se, the environment consisting of faithful Catholics has allowed him to continue to pursue his faith and live it out in interactions in the office and with homeowners and insurance adjusters. He is also happily married to Sarah. I don't know where she is. Somewhere. She's hiding. All right. Next, we have Maesa Vincente, who graduated in 2023. She brought her own fans. She majored in political science and completed multiple internships, both over the summer and during the semester. She interned at Media Research Center, Population Research Institute, and participated in several national and local political campaigns. The summer before graduation, she also had the opportunity to intern for Congresswoman Maria Salazar in her district office in Miami, Florida. Now Maesa is honored to work for Young America's Foundation, which seeks to motivate students across the nation to inspire the minds and hearts of their peers with high standards of freedom and conservatism. And she recently got a promotion, which she will be starting on Monday, which is very exciting. Woo! And then, last but certainly not least, we have Mary Clare Young, who graduated. All right, you win the award. All right, excuse me. She majored in classics and minored in history and theology, and is pursuing a PhD in classics at the University of Virginia. As a second-year graduate student, her day-to-day includes working at the university as a teaching assistant for elementary Latin, taking classes on a range of topics from the Aeneid to Greek hymns, and pursuing her own research on the side. Outside of the classroom, she is a Templeton Fellow with the St. Anselm Institute for Catholic Thought and a founding board member of a new ministry for Catholic graduate students at UVA. I would love to hear more about that. And in her spare time, which is hard to believe that you have any spare time, she enjoys cooking and baking, reading good books and talking about them, writing poetry, and making joyful memories with new and old friends. So give our guests a round of applause and welcome them. So yes, I just introduced you. Well, by the way, I should introduce this kind of concept. A couple years ago, we did this for the first time where we brought back a few recent graduates. I think, and hopefully you get it from EFL and Mr. McFadden and I talking about this, your career is not the only important part of leaving Christendom. We want you to understand what it's like to, just kind of live and survive, and we wanted to talk to you about budgeting and finding a place to live and engaging in the community and all of these other topics. So we wanted to bring back recent grads and do it again, since we haven't done it in a few years, to kind of give you an insight into what it is actually like when you get to leave Christendom, when you have to, when you are just dragged kicking and screaming away from Christendom. So, all right, so even though I introduced you all, why don't you tell us in just a few sentences how you got to where you are now? So, John Paul, tell us about being at LifeSite and how you got there.
Sure. So I started I got into filmmaking when I was 11, and then it just took off from there. I taught myself filmmaking, and then in Christendom, I was blessed to work for Niall O'Donnell and do stuff for marketing, and it really helped then develop my skills and get some extra credentials. And then through EFL and Mrs. Stevens, she connected me to Jim Hale at LifeSite News, and then I started my internship there, and the rest is history, and I'm still there, and it's been a fun time.
Yeah, excellent. Brian?
Can you hear me? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Again, as she said, I'm working at Claimstar Public Adjusting in Front Royal, but right after graduating, I started working at Enterprise Rent-A-Car. They have this really great, and which I didn't know going in, but they had a really well-known management program, and I worked there for a year and 3 months, and then I started at Claimstar in March, and yeah, still live in Front Royal, but loving it, and married to my beautiful wife, so here we go.
All right, Maesa?
Yeah, so I've been involved in politics pretty much my whole life, but especially here at Christendom. So I first heard about YAF. I applied to one of their internships in California, but that's when I decided to take the Miami one with Congresswoman Salazar. So then, I got on their email list after that, and they sent their NCSC program, which is like a student conference, and I went to that conference and I loved it. It was hosted by YAF. So I honestly can't remember how I found the job posting, because I applied to a few different places, and I don't know if you sent it to me. I don't know. I'm so sorry. I can't remember. But I know I applied, and I just did a couple interviews, and I really loved it. I love the community that they have there, and then I started in August.
In August.
Yeah.
Tell us briefly what you did last summer.
I went to Europe. My brother's stationed in Italy in the army, so I went to visit him, and I had a remote job. It was a campaign, a very temporary campaign job. So I was doing that. I felt like I needed more time to apply for jobs and just think about what I wanted to do exactly. So there's no rush. But yeah, that's what I did.
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I knew pretty much since I would say I was a freshman that I wanted to go to grad school, and I wanted to go to grad school for classics. It took a couple of years to confirm that I wanted to go straight in after college and not wait to take a gap year, which is common, and that I would want to ultimately go for a PhD and not just get a master's and be done with it. How I got to UV specifically, that started senior year when I was looking to different programs that fit my interests, that fit my different requirements and needs, number one being full funding so that I wouldn't have to get into more debt to go through grad school. And UVA was on my radar because Dr. Andrew Beer went there for his PhD, said it was a good program, it was in Virginia, thought why not apply, and ultimately got into there, and then Notre Dame for their master's program. And in the end, I decided to go to UVA based on the wise advice of my professors and, to be frank, my gut, which is a very good place to go if you're trying to figure out how to make a decision. So I've been there since August 2022, and it's been a great adventure. And I'm really excited to talk about the non-grad school things that I do that you need to take care of in life.
And I will say, it wasn't just your gut, it was long, agonizing conversations that we had.
That's true.
About where is she gonna go, and it was a lot of listen to your gut, but it was also just back and forth, which one's gonna, oh, thank you so much.
That's true. You were an important part of helping with the discernment.
Yes, I just remembered that as you started saying that you had to think about it. I was like, I remember all those conversations. And the reassurance is that you can't make a wrong choice. That sounds really odd to say, but sometimes that's the thing you need to hear, that both choices are going to be really, really great. And sometimes you are left with that, like two great choices, and you're probably not going to make the wrong choice. So, yeah. Okay, well, great. Well, thank you for kind of introducing yourselves a little bit more. What I'd like to start out with is what has been easy about the transition to post-grad life? Start with you, John Paul.
Sure. When you graduate from Christendom, academic stress disappears. That is if you don't act like Miss Young and then go to grad school and then you have more. But that was such a weight off my chest, especially after senior year. It just kind of, depending on who you are and how much you're into the books, it can really pile up. But once you graduate, the academic panic is over, and then you don't have to worry about your GPA. And you actually have free time after 5 p.m. and you can just relax and enjoy life and not have that constant burden of worrying about your next assignment. So just having the freedom, and then also having more freedom to do extra things outside of college because you have more free time and you can determine a bit more, obviously, what trajectory your life is going to take, so you can then work on the job that you really enjoy. You can pursue things in the time that you now have. You have to be intentional about life because things aren't handed to you and as structured as they are in college. But if you begin having good habits in college, you can bring that to when you have even more time and can do more things. And yeah, there's so much room for opportunity and a lot of good times ahead after you graduate.
I like that. Brian?
Yeah, I guess my first thought was it is pretty hard getting out of school, and because I finished a semester early, so it was a little bit harder for me just because my classmates were still in school, so I wasn't able to get that last semester of like finishing up at Christendom. So December 13th or 15th, that week was the last kind of Christendom week for me, and then in January on, I think the Monday after the March for Life, I started work. So it was a lot kind of coming at you, but I think just kind of right as it started though, and I feel like I was just reassured right away that like I can do this, which is really not something I thought I was going to need. I thought I was going to be like, I have work now, I go to work, it's fine, I drive to work, I come back, eat, do all the stuff. But I just remember like going to the store and being like, I've made it a list at home for like my family, but usually it's small things like candy or popcorn or little things like that, or even at school it's kind of very small things. But that first time I went in and I needed to get my food for the next 2 weeks, I vividly remember walking in with the cart and being like, what am I doing here? I don't even know if I'm going to get the amount that I need, and I definitely have the money for it, but I just kind of don't know what I'm doing. So, but then right as I finished, I walked out into the line to pay, and I looked at kind of all the food I was getting, and I mean, I got this. Like this is all food that I need, and so I think right away it was scary, but then also right away there was this reassurance that I can do this, and I had a job and I started work right away, and things just kind of lined up right as I was finishing, so that helped a lot. I think especially for seniors, like this is your last semester and you have to like figure out work. There's definitely no rush. Like you can take a summer off, or you can, like if you're living at home, that's fine, but like it's gonna work if you start looking. And like as long as you're looking, and as long as you're either talking to Mrs. Stevens or just looking into things that you want to do, like it's gonna work out, and you're gonna find the job, and you're gonna figure out how to make it work. So yeah.
Yeah. What about you, ladies? What was easy about the transition?
I feel like I'm kind of the opposite of what both of you have said, because as John Paul acknowledged, I went from school to even more school, so academic stress levels have not lowered or abated at all. But I for whatever reason, found the transition to living on my own itself the easiest part. In part, I was just very fortunate in having a very good housing situation and getting a car within 2 weeks of graduation.
Sure.
And I also had the advantage of only moving 2 hours away because I grew up in Northern Virginia, and Charlottesville, Virginia, where I go to school, is just a 2-hour drive down 29. So if I was moving cross country, it would have been much more difficult to figure out how do I furnish a new place, how do I take things here, but I was able to first gradually move in, and also I took about a week to just get acclimated in my new situation before I started grad school, which I would highly recommend if you have the time, because then you can start to develop habits of, okay, figuring out meal planning, shopping lists, cleaning schedules, and getting to know where you're going to live before the rubber meets the road and you have no time to look around you. And I felt that at the time, I felt I was nuts and I didn't have any time to make a transition because I was working a full-time and a part-time job that summer, but in retrospect, I think it actually was the smoothest part. When I got down there, I felt like I was ready to live on my own. I felt like I knew how to care for myself, grocery shop, meal plan within a budget, and the Rome semester was, I think, really good training here. And several times during Rome, I would stop and think, this is what life would be like if I were a grad student, because I needed to be responsible about getting a class, but also prepping my own meals, going grocery shopping, knowing what to get, how much to get, cooking, cleaning up after I cook, keeping the apartment tidy, and balancing all that within an academic schedule, because when you're here in Front Royal, someone else is cooking your meals, you don't really have to do a lot of cleaning, you can spend all your time on your extracurriculars and on your school. But in Rome, I think I really got a practical sense for how to live on my own and care for myself well, and that transferred over very well to living independently.
Excellent.
That was a definite bonus of the Rome program.
Yeah, we'll tell them to add it to the flyer of a benefit to going to Rome. All right, Maesa, did you want to add anything about the transition?
Yeah, well, as an off-campus student,
Oh, okay.
no, but it was, I think like you guys said, there's easy, like, parts of it where you don't have to think about studying after 5. That's great, but then, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that too. It's like, what do I do with this block of time? And it's like, I want to read, I want to paint, I want to do like all these things. So yeah, just like, and you get it into a rhythm eventually. It can be just a little bit daunting at first, I think, like he was saying, like, I have all this money now, I go to the grocery store, like, how much do I buy?
Right.
But
Make
yeah.
sure you don't just buy Pop-Tarts and
Right.
cereal.
Yeah. But yeah, that's, I guess,
Okay.
what I would add.
So you guys all kind of touched on some of the difficult parts of the transition, but is there anything else that was really difficult that you wanted to share to say, like, hey, I made it through? It was difficult, but I made it through.
I'd say academically, if you are considering going to grad school, I'll be blunt, the workload is a very steep increase from where you are at Christendom. I'd say that my homework levels went anywhere from triple to maybe 6 times the amount of homework that I have. Okay. Now, the good thing is the number of classes decreased. So currently, I'm only taking 3 courses. I've never had more than 4 at a time, but it's much more intense. And I definitely cried more than once my first 2 weeks of grad school as I sat trying to work through 300 lines of very difficult Latin, and I thought, what have I done? Why am I here? Why didn't I just go get a normal job like all my friends so I don't have to do homework after 5 o'clock anymore? But I pushed through, and the support and encouragement of all my Christendom friends and the new friends I was making helped me get through, because I just kept thinking, they all believed I could do it. If they believe I can do it, I probably can do it. So once I got over the hump and fell into the rhythm, I definitely was sure that I was where I was supposed to be. But the first 2 weeks definitely were very, very painful. But it's temporary pain.
Yeah.
You'll push through. I guarantee it.
Okay. John Paul, did you have any difficulty in transitioning?
Sure. I would say that the most difficult part for me was just getting situated as far as renting, finding a good place to live. I really did find it just by looking it up and then talking to different people and getting a tour of different places, and I was able to work it out, but that was definitely something that weighed on my mind initially, because it's like, where am I going to go right after college? And my friend had to stay with some other people. Joseph Cole, we're roommates still, and yeah, we've just been very blessed to be able to stick together but he had to stay with some other people because our rent didn't start. He needed to start work sooner than I did, so sometimes that initial phase can just be a bit of a pinch, just trying to figure it out.
He actually stayed with me.
Oh yes, that's right.
I did, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's some connections.
Thank you for helping.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So let's kind of move on to something that you guys have started touching on, which is finances and budgeting. So how did you prepare yourself for that? Do you feel like you've figured it out yet? Are you still working through it? How is your financial situation without telling them how your financial situation is, if that makes sense? So, Brian, talk to us about it.
Okay. I think, well, I guess right off the bat, I think what helped was definitely EFL, because I think there was one class that we had to talk about budgeting, but then there was I even talked with you, maybe it was after one of the sessions you had, which really helped, knowing the different ways that you can budget, either typing it out or envelopes, and I haven't quite gotten there, but I definitely think it's helpful to know the different ways that you can budget. But I also think, I knew, even going to the grocery store that first time, I knew how much I needed to spend for the first 2 weeks. So I knew what I had to work within, along with the other expenses that I needed. I feel like the biggest thing and the best thing to do is to obviously take into account how much you're getting paid every 2 weeks, or I work rather than working on a monthly basis, I work on an every 2 week basis, just because of it's easier for me because I know this money is here and I don't have, there's going to be more money coming in, but I don't have to worry about that until later. So I think as long as you know what your expenses are, you know how much money is going out, and then you also can put that up to how much money you're making. So if there's too much money going out, that means you have to cut back on something. So I think for me, I still use an Excel sheet, because I found that Excel is really easy, and I'm not doing anything complicated, but literally just typing in numbers and then adding and subtracting. So it's really nothing hard, but just knowing how much is going out and being realistic about what you own, or all the subscriptions, or rent. Rent is, obviously rent is a huge thing. Finding it, and then also making sure it's within just how much you're making is, it can, almost every time, if it kind of hurts, the money going out, you're that's a lot of the money I'm making, but because it is going out, you know that every month you're going to be staying somewhere, so that's really helpful. I just think having a plan for it is really nice, and it helps a lot. So,
Maesa, talk to us about how you've managed your finances.
Yeah, so something that has helped me a lot, I remember talking to you about this in an EFL, that was really helpful too, especially, I think, maybe this is a little bit of a different topic, but salary negotiation. That's something that I was so confused about. I was how do I ask people for money? But yeah, something that really helped me was after I got my first paycheck, I just sat down and laid everything out, my income, my expenses. And my sister gave me these budget sheets that I should probably use Excel, because it's just on a paper. But I just filled them out, and it's really nice, because when your senior year, you're worrying about your student loans, and then there's all these deadlines about okay, interest is going to kick in a year or 2 years, and then what percentage is that interest? And there's all these things that I feel can be very overwhelming right now. But after that first paycheck, I just found it really helpful to just sit down. You'll cross that bridge when you get to it. You can't do anything about your student loans right now, probably. But once you get that first paycheck, it's really nice to just lay it all out. Once you get to that thing that you were confused about before, you'll deal with it then. So I just wouldn't worry about it right now.
Yeah. Any more
Sure.
Things you want to share about finances and budgeting?
Sure. For me, the biggest problem is when I have so much extra money, how to just spend it as quickly as possible because I don't know what to do with it all.
Happens for all Christmas
Exactly. As soon as you graduate, it's like, where did all this money come from? But what helped me is actually one of the points in EFL is the 50-30-20 rule, which is keeping in mind, generally speaking, 50% of your income you want to be spending on your needs, 30% on your wants, and 20% towards savings. So to try to get a rough idea of what that is, and then what's helpful for me is using a credit card, and then I can keep track of how much roughly per month I'm spending based on that in relation to my monthly salary, and make sure that I'm sort of staying on track with that metric. And then also finding, if it's possible, in addition to your actual main job, if there's ever any like side jobs you can find to just pay rent or to offset some of the things, and especially to help get out of debt as quickly as possible, so that if you have loans, like if you're paying your student loan, you want to try to pay off as much in the first year before it starts accruing interest. So things of that sort, and to try to save as much as possible so that you can obviously pay any debts that you have and start building for your future. But it's also, don't be afraid to invest in yourself as well. Like if you see an opportunity where you can start developing some more skills and you know that this is going to benefit you in the long run, you can strategically invest in yourself in building skills so that you can get better paying jobs and things of that sort. So yeah, that's what I would say as far as budgeting.
I guess to that point, I think that, and actually I wasn't doing this for a little bit until within Enterprise, there was an opportunity to move to kind of another part of Enterprise. So I ended up moving, and there was I had a new manager, and the first time, he gave me advice that I'm still doing now, but I think is very helpful with saving, is to so obviously you're getting a paycheck and it's going to your checking account every 2 weeks or whatever that looks like for your job. But I've only worked 2 jobs, so I guess I can't really talk about every job, but with obviously you're telling them the bank account that it's going to, but you can also do percentage of what's going to what bank account. So if you have 2 bank accounts, you can, right as you get the paycheck, just have a certain amount, 20%, 15%, 10%, go straight into a savings account, and then you don't even see it, and you also don't have to think about taking it out of your checking, and so you won't be tempted to spend it, because then, although it is really easy to transfer things over, it can, obviously you're working and you have a lot of things going on in your life. You can kind of get lost in it all just because there's just so much. But like taking that off of your shoulders, like I don't even have to think about this money that's being saved. It's just being saved, and I see it in this other bank account. So that is really helpful. I think for the first 2 months I wasn't doing that, and I was spending too much money. So like it was, but now like it doesn't even seem like I'm getting paid less. I'm just working within what I have in my checking account. So
I'm still in that phase.
Okay, yeah. Well,
I'm learning.
Yeah, no, sure, but I think I think with that though, it's like you've never been an adult before. So like when you graduate, you're an adult, not when you graduate, you're an adult now, but you have a lot more responsibilities when you graduate and you're on your own or you're starting to work. Like there's still things that you're going to be learning and tips that other people are going to have. So like don't be discouraged. Like you're going to figure it out, as I said before. But yeah.
Also,
I was going to say on that point, the different bank accounts, they can be at different banks so that you
Right.
can't transfer them as easily.
Right, that's true.
And I have that set up for myself, that I send money to 3 different accounts: fund money, bill money, and savings money. So
There you go.
that's a great tip. John Paul.
also, if you stay in the Front Royal area, shop at Aldi's and not Martin's.
Yes.
It's like
That's
half the price.
I second the Aldi's recommend.
Oh no, did it?
I second the Aldi's recommendation.
Okay, there you
There
go.
you go.
It's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now tell us about, obviously you don't have the same kind of income that these three have having a full-time job. Tell us about what it is like to live on grad school income and then talk to us about fully funding. Just explain that to people
Yeah.
if they're not sure what that is.
Yeah, so I'm in a rather privileged situation for grad school in that UVA provides, not only covers all the tuition, but also gives you a very generous stipend that actually is enough to live on if you're economical. A lot of times, students who might go to grad school just for a master's might have to apply to get tuition covered or to get scholarships, but it's often not enough. So you have to take out loans or you have to work other jobs on the side. I've had friends who've done master's programs who have to do this. If you go to law school, you have to take out a loan and then have to pay that back. So the fact that I didn't need to take out a loan to go to grad school. I can just live off of the money that I'm paid every month as a TA and as a fellow, and I'm very grateful for that. That being said, it's not enough to fulfill all of your wants, but it's enough to cover needs for sure. And there's also times where you can earn more money on the side, like John Paul is saying. So over the summer, I worked at the intensive Latin program at UVA, and I was able to earn more money that I could put into emergency savings, which I would highly recommend doing as quick as possible. Put money into a 3-month emergency savings account in a maybe account that's separate, like other people were saying, or even within your own bank, and then that money's just there not to be touched. And over the summer, when I had more money that I was earning and that I could save, I would just immediately pull a certain amount out of my paycheck every month and stow it away in the emergency savings. So I knew that I could build that up as much as possible. Going into grad school, I had to learn how to make a budget in the decision process because I needed to make sure that wherever I was going, there would be enough money for me to be able to find housing that would be reasonable and wouldn't just be a little hole in someone's garage, because that wouldn't be very safe or ideal. So I drafted budgets for both like South Bend, Indiana and Charlottesville in making my decision. And so I had caps set, okay, this is how much money I can spend a month on rent, and this is how much I can spend on a car payment, and maybe this is how much I'll need to spend for gas. And those numbers are very helpful when I moved to Charlottesville that I could use as a basis for actually real life planning. I'm like, people have said I'm still figuring things out. As an adult, the discretionary spending is sometimes hard, but go at the end of every month, like take a look at where you've been going and where you've been coming from and think, okay, what adjustments do I need to make? What am I actually spending? What do I actually need to spend? Which is something that I think we got drilled in pretty well with EFL, is constantly, or not constantly, at least regularly checking back in and seeing how are things going.
Yeah, certainly. Okay, so thank you for all of that. Hopefully that's helpful. A lot of you wanted to know about budgeting. The few people that filled out my survey, which means those are the few people that read my whole email from Gabrielle that says, hey, submit your questions. They wanted to know about budgeting and finances, and I think that that's a piece that we don't get to cover enough in EFL, so you guys don't get that part of it. So thank you all for sharing so much about that. Let's move on to what it has been like to acclimate to a new location. So Maesa and Mary Clare moved to a totally new place, whereas Brian and John Paul ended up staying here in Front Royal. So I'd love to know kind of the difference and what has it been like, Maesa, to acclimate to where you are, to a new location outside of Christendom?
Yeah, well, I think I was lucky because a lot of my friends live in the area. It's like the DC area. But I think the mistake that I made at first was thinking that, you know, at Christendom, there's so many activities surrounding you. So I expected to be like seeing my friends like all the time. And that was like kind of hard to be like, oh wait, you know, they live so close, but I don't see them as much. And I think it can be a little bit overwhelming because you feel the pressure of like, you just want to be with them. But I think it's what helped me was just, you know, waiting for the dust to settle. Obviously, I still hung out with them a little bit in between, but, you know, just give yourself some grace, like let the dust settle, establish your own routine, and don't feel the pressure to just have like a community and an activity every week and to fill your life, because then you can't make a commitment, you can't drop out. Don't do that so fast, but I mean, yeah, that would just work for me, so.
Okay. Mary Clare, what about you? How has it been like getting to know the whole new set of people, right?
Yeah, that was something that thing like we talked about when I was making the grad school decision, which was, do I go to some place where there'll be people that I know already, even if they won't be in my program, or do I go someplace completely new? And advice that I consistently got from you and from all my professors was, wherever you go, you will find your people. And that's true. Sometimes you need to go dig a little bit to find them, but it's ultimately worth it. It was something that I knew I'd have to adjust to, because coming to Christendom, it's like you have your community handed to you on a silver platter. You know that everyone who's there is going to be committed to their faith, be committed to the intellectual life, and y'all can be studying like the basic 7 liberal arts. But going out into UVA, I needed to find those people at a secular university. So I was fortunate to get connected in with the campus ministry pretty quickly, even while I was still a student here, from getting in touch with maybe children of acquaintances from church, or Dr. Beer still had some connections there. So from them I was able to get connected with the young adult community where I found my housing. I got right into the campus ministry chats, and they are amazing. No sooner do I walk into their group chat than at least 3 people message me saying, hello, we're so happy here. Let me connect you up to these people and this people, and I can help you find roommates if you need to find roommates. And then I got to meet these people in person. And I took advantage of as many opportunities as I could to try out different things, whether it was a philosophical debating society or a reading group, to find the people who were interested in the things I was interested in. It definitely took time. I had a moment right around this time last year where I just made a little note in my phone and just prayed, Lord, please send me friends. I feel so lonely. God answers those prayers. So to take a long story short, within about 7 months, I realized I'd been called to form a community of some sort, and finding other people who also had that same call basically started to more actively create Catholic grad student ministry at UVA, because there wasn't very much formally before. I could maybe meet monthly for dinners with grad students, but that was about it. So over time, we just started reaching out to people and asking them, hey, would you like to come and have dinner and watch the UVA football game with us? Hey, do you want to come to Mass on Sunday? And do you want to go to brunch? And taking steps to welcome other people, find them in, build fellowship. God has been so good, and we now have a thriving little community of grad students all across the school and the professional schools, where we have maybe not weekly events maybe, but at least monthly social events, rarely going to Mass and adoration together. And that's been such a blessing to be on the side of going out to help not only find my people, but help other people find their people. And it'd be something I'd be happy to talk about more in Q&A or afterwards, what it's like on the ministry side of grad school. It was not something I planned for at all starting this year. I'm like, no, I'm just gonna focus on my schoolwork. But when the Lord asks you to do something, he finds ways to make it work.
Yeah, that's excellent. Thank you so much for sharing about that. All right, gentlemen, you have stayed in Front Royal. You're traveling a little bit, but tell us what it has been like to kind of stay in this area, but be separated from Christendom.
It's definitely a blessing in the sense of the community, because if you stay in Front Royal, there's a good chance there will be friends that you have that are also in the area. Statistics just end up being that way.
Yes.
So I've been very blessed in regarding my community, that most of my close friends are still in the area and we can meet up, and I'm very happy to be able to do that. You do have to be more intentional, because it doesn't just happen like it does when you're at college and you can just hang out or bump into each other and do things. You have to set aside time and say, hey, let's do a movie night, let's do a hike, let's come over for dinner. There are all sorts of different activities that you can do, but you have to be intentional about making sure that it happens, because life otherwise will just get busy and you'll overlook it. So that's been very nice, having the strong Catholic community, and also getting to know the larger Front Royal community, St. John the Baptist, and I feel very blessed to be here as well, because there's a lot of just great opportunities for Catholics, like going to adoration at the Adoration Chapel in town, and it's kind of surreal, but it is really cool to come back to Christendom and kind of relive it as a non-student, and just go to Mass and see old familiar faces, and just visit the beautiful chapel and things like that. So yeah, it's been great. I really have been blessed to be here still.
Hold that thought. What do we need to do, gentlemen? Because it's buzzing up here. We're good? Maybe not? Okay. It's not bothering you too much, is it? Excellent. You can barely, Walter's like, I can't even hear it. It's fine. Walter says it's fine, it's fine. Okay, so Brian, you're in a little bit of a different situation.
Right.
So talk to us about that.
So obviously, so finishing the semester early, my whole class was still here. So that first semester out, I mean, I still had the people I was going to class with around, but it still was really, I think, being intentional, what John Paul said, was kind of the hardest thing for me. And so, yeah, just because my first job at Enterprise, hours were, so I would work up in Winchester, so it was like 45-minute drive, which wasn't terrible, but I would start work at 7 and then come back or finish work at 5:30. So I was working a lot of hours, and then 45 minutes there and back. I would have to get up pretty early, and then I'm getting back exhausted, kind of just coming back home. And that was, so being intentional even when you're tired, and like knowing that you have friends in the area, but and I live down, right now I live down the street from here, but I used to live down the street from St. John, so it was like 15 minutes away, so nothing crazy, but even 15 minutes when you're really tired after work makes it really hard to just like, hey, okay, yeah, I'm gonna go visit people on campus, or yeah, and obviously I wanted to, because I mean I was dating Sarah at the time, and like, so that's like, I wanted to be here, and I have a lot of friends, I mean still here, but yeah, so being intentional was, I think, the biggest thing. Even though you're in town and you're around, like, you still see people around from your class, it can be still hard. Yeah, and then the other thing, then maybe this is, I'll just say because it feels natural, but with my first job, so obviously working a lot of hours, I was beginning, toward the end of Christendom, I was beginning to realize how much more introverted I was than I thought I was before. Just growing up, my family is really extroverted, so just like imitating who I grew up with definitely was something I grew up with. Coming into Christendom, even the first couple of years, I was definitely thought I was more extroverted than introverted. But so my work, I was working with, people were coming in all the time, and I would either talk with 40 people a day, having either just like small conversations and really mundane conversations like, hey, how's it going? But just having them come to you rather than you either starting the conversation can be really tiring. And I didn't really know that until I was like, I didn't really even like think about it until a couple months in. But knowing that St. John's had the 24-hour adoration, or maybe not 24, but it's something similar, something like that. After work, being so exhausted on the ride home, 45 minutes, just kind of like, I just want to get home, I want to eat, I just want to sleep. But being able to go to the chapel, I think the first time I went, I don't know if I fell asleep, but I probably did. But like, so I was there for, I think it ended up being about an hour, just sitting there and just trying to like decompress. But I remember leaving and going home to eat and feeling so much more so much more rejuvenated and able to actually go cook. And like it sounds mundane, but it was a huge blessing, and I begun doing that a lot. Because of the amount of interaction that I wasn't doing myself, but it was just coming to me all the time. So yeah, I guess in total, in the intentionality part was, I think, still something that I'm struggling with a bit, but yeah, and I still have classmates around, and I live I live in a basement of a home, and there are 6 guys upstairs who were either in my class or in the class below that I was already good friends with. So that's fun, having people close, but you still have to be intentional about, oh, hey, are we going to hang out this day or this day? So that's still something I'm working on, but yeah, I think spiritually, just being able to have time that you pray every day definitely helped me, yeah.
So I want to switch gears because I didn't realize how late it's getting. Because I could just talk to you all forever, and I think you all could hopefully listen for a little while. But I do want to touch on a topic that a lot of people are very interested in knowing about, and that is dating. And obviously Brian is married now, but talk to us about just a little bit, very quickly, about dating after Christendom or dating at Christendom. Like, what advice do you have for them? Anybody can start. I will not point fingers and call on anybody.
Sure. I would just say that it's important to continue to try to get to know the wider community and hang out with people, and it's the best context to start out getting to know people, going to things like Life on Tap or different diocesan events where you're going to meet people who share your same values, and just getting to know a broad range of people and not to panic just because you've graduated, and to just take your time and get to know people and develop friendships, and then see where things go and where God leads you.
Yeah, okay. Ladies?
For the other ladies here, and for the gents too, the dating pool's a lot bigger than Christendom. There's a lot of great people out there outside of this little tiny circle of Front Royal. I know, I found someone. We've been dating for 2 months, and it's been great. That being said, I would like to second what John Paul said about focusing on friendships. The number one problem I've seen in young adult communities, and I could talk for like hours about dating and dating stereotypes and what to do and not to do, but don't just go into a group thinking, I'm going to find my future spouse at this event. No, don't do that. Focus on finding people that you can be friends with, because like John Paul was saying, when you find people who share your common values and who are pursuing the same things you are, that's the foundation for a great friendship, and friendship can also be a great basis for a relationship. My boyfriend and I were friends for several months before we actually started dating, and knowing that we had those common values and were interested in pursuing the good and the true and the beautiful in similar ways definitely helped our relationship to transition. One thing I would note is that in the real world, you have to be intentional about making time for dating, because it's very easy at Christendom, from what I've observed, to spend from when you get up in the morning to when you go to bed at night, all that time with your significant other, especially if you all have the same classes. That doesn't really work whether you're working a 9-to-5 job or whether you are in grad school. But the intentionality is good, and it's important, because when I'd love to hear like your experiences, Brian, but I'm sure that there's times when you have to be very intentional too with spending time to be with Sarah, whether it's just a date or just one-on-one time to talk about important things, because when life comes, you just have to, you have to apportion your time out well and not let grad school or other things steamroll it. But it's, I can 10 out of 10 recommend. It's been great.
Excellent. Maesa, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think my experience is a little bit flipped, because I met Simon while I was at Christendom, but not at Christendom. So
Okay.
it kind of got easier, honestly, after graduation, because he lived in New York. And so our senior year was long distance, like every other weekend driving to New York, or he would come down to Virginia. And now he lives 1 hour away. So,
Oh, nice.
so that to me is like a lot closer.
A little bit different.
But I didn't really, I mean, my Christendom ex it was like middle school. We would never see each other here anyway. So, it was very interesting.
Very
But,
different. Okay.
I didn't really see him that much at Christendom.
Brian, is there anything you don't have to be the guy that gives all the advice here, but is there anything you want to say about being married while, she's still in school, or balancing the married life with a job?
Yeah. Well, so when I first started working, we were dating, but then, so that was, as I was saying before, just being intentional with the time that was available to me. So obviously getting off of work, eating, and then like resting for a little bit, but then also coming here we definitely had to be intentional. Again, we were only 15 minutes away, but she had work to do and I was really tired. So I guess just even being intentional about the time that we did have together was a big learning curve, because we went from seeing each other every day to seeing each other maybe 3-4 times a week, but and for nowhere near the time that we were seeing each other at school. So it was definitely, and really up until even now being married, and obviously like seeing each other every day when I get up, but then also when I get off of work. And with work, it's changed a bit. So I work 10 minutes away now rather than 40. So I don't have to leave as early, and I also don't come back as late. So I have a lot more time, but even then there's, we still have to really plan. It was one thing we learned, I think, when right as I started working was being intentional about, hey, we're gonna be hanging out tonight, but then also we want to do something together rather than just kind of sitting with each other. And there's hanging out and there's hanging out. So it's you're obviously if I'm here and she's doing homework, obviously that's great to be in her presence, but then also to either plan a date or plan to go just either playing a board game or going out to dinner or something like that. Being intentional about having the space to, okay, we're gonna have this time together, and we'll go on our phones or we'll kind of get distracted about things, but we still have this time together, and we don't have to think about those other things. But even now, I mean, again, we still have to be intentional about having dates or doing things on certain nights, because I feel like every week I'm I have nothing this week. And then Monday comes around and I have every day of the week there's something. So you just have to be sure that you're making time for the people that you want to be with, and friends-wise, and also, I think it's come up so much, but being intentional about it is huge. And being able to order your time well is hard, but if you start doing it, it's going to start happening, and that's.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, can you all, we didn't even cover several of these questions that I have, but can you give one piece of advice or two pieces of advice, if you need to the folks out here, especially seniors who are getting ready to leave, and then somebody touch on hey, underclassmen, there's still time to prepare and do things while you're here. So what is the thing that we didn't get to talk about, your piece of advice that you want to leave with the students before we kind of turn it over, see what other questions you guys might have? Yeah.
I would say develop skills. If there's a particular job or something that you're interested in specifically, it's good to get experience in different areas, but especially if there's a particular field that you're interested in doing after college, it's good to start doing it now and to do it on the side and to just have fun with it. Don't stress about it, but do it because you love it. In my case, it was doing filmmaking, directing a film, working for the marketing office, and you don't know what doors it will open up just to have that experience and to be able to say on a resume, I did these things. And because future employers are always looking for, do you have 3 to 5 years? And you can say, well, I did 3 years at Christendom while I was doing this, and I directed a film, or whatever it is that you're interested in, you can say that you have it because you started, and that gives you much more credibility when you're writing a cover letter or doing a resume. So definitely start pursuing something, especially if you're interested and know what direction you might want to take as far as a career. Just start doing it now, do it with your friends, and just enjoy it and become good at it, as good as you can be where you are.
I have two things. One, with work, don't be afraid if you're working somewhere and you really just don't like it. Don't be afraid to look elsewhere. I think actually kind of funny. I didn't really know how much I didn't like the environment I was in until I am in this job I am now, and I'm surrounded by other Catholics. And obviously, we're all called to go to certain jobs, and you're going to be around different people and people of different walks of life. But I found it pretty jarring right away to go from Christendom to not Christendom. I'll just say that. And so, yeah, just don't be afraid to, if you're really, there is virtue in pushing through. And it's like, okay, maybe I don't like this job, but I'll try it. I remember, I think the first couple months saying to myself, I really don't like this and I don't want to keep doing this. But pushing through and even working for a year, I feel like I learned a lot. But then also, Mrs. Stevens has a lot of resources. I wouldn't have found ClaimStar if I didn't think that I could leave the one job, but then also to even think about asking for it or asking for ideas about other work. So just don't be afraid to not like what you're doing. I'll just say that. And then number 2 is loans. Her ideas of paying them off. I'm pretty sure, or I've heard that while you're in school, you can actually put money towards them, especially if they're Christendom loans. I don't know about private loans, but Christendom loans, you can put money towards them and not start interest accruing. I would definitely ask about that, but I'm pretty sure a friend of mine, while in school, was paying them off, and by the end, didn't have any loans, I think. So just think about that. But then also, when you start paying off loans, you can choose the monthly payment and choose the least, and then so pay that every month, but then also have other payments towards it, so you're bringing the principal down. So that's principal is just the big number, but that's all.
And I'm happy to talk to you all about that if you ever want to talk more about it. Yeah. Maesa, what are your nuggets that you want to leave them with?
I think going off of kind of what they said about, you don't have to have it all figured out. I know that's a little bit cliche, but it is so true. And I think especially for women especially, what we see in our future is a little bit different from men career-wise. I think a lot of us, we want to be moms, we want to have families. A lot of us want to be stay-at-home moms. So sometimes when we think about a career, it's just daunting because it's I don't want to do this my whole life. I don't want to be in a 9-to-5 or whatever job situation my whole life. And I think knowing that, just the way that the economy is, we have to make money. So, but in light of that, I think it's a great opportunity to involve one of our passions in that. So, politics is not the only thing I like to do. I'm very passionate about politics and I love it. And even though I don't see myself working in it forever, those skills that you gain do not go to waste. You can teach your children if you ever want to do a side hustle in the future, there's always some knowledge from your career or your internships, whatever you do during school or right after school that you can pass on for the future. So none of that is going to go to waste, and don't be so pressured, I feel to say, oh, where is your career going to go, in the future? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Don't let that scare you. And just know that as long as you're happy where you are after school, you know, like Brian was saying, like he has a really good environment that he's in. You know, I love the people that I work with. I love the job that I do, but I know I'm not going to be in it forever, and I'm okay with that. So yeah, it's to good use, all of it. And,
Yeah. Right.
I have a short version and then long version. The short version is pray and be still. The long version of that is, we've talked about, like all of us have had very different paths and different ways that we've discerned how to go about our different life choices, whether it's changing job or going to grad school. But what's going to keep you centered through all of the ebbs and tides of life is going to be having a strong prayer life. And we are so privileged here to have Mass twice a day, so many opportunities for confession, holy hours. Take advantage of that. You're not going to find anywhere else in the world that's going to have that richness of opportunity. And by building up habits of prayer, learning to pray, and learning to just sit and be silent with the Lord, you'll learn to develop that interior voice that will help to guide you through life, whether you're in the secular world and you're facing countercultural pressures that don't exist here because, to be blunt, this is life inside the bubble. But when you know how to pray and have your life centered around that, then your priorities will come in order. Whether you stay in Front Royal or go to a new community, find out where the churches are immediately. Try out as many masses as you can immediately and find what works for you, and then within that, develop habits of prayer throughout the day, finding times for adoration. Like Brian said, I've had times where I go and I'll spend some time in prayer after the end of a day or at the beginning of a day, and it helps you get in the right mindset for taking on whatever challenges you had. And when you can learning to pray also taught me to learn how to be still and how to rest, which is not easy to do in grad school where everyone's running on high-strung nerves because we do have assignments and midterms that are still due and the stakes are a lot higher, but you can't live being anxious all the time. So seniors, if you're anxious because you don't have your life figured out yet or you don't know where you're going, be at peace. It will all be okay, I assure you. And if you go there after Life on Tap and you talk about it with the Lord and you learn to talk with him, then he will guide you wherever you need to be, and you will know where to go and to trust in his goodness, and your life will be blessed beyond measure. I think that everyone here would probably agree with that.
Thank you. That was such a beautiful way to end this because it is, well, we're at an hour. Does anybody have burning questions that you must ask them because we didn't touch on a topic? I'm happy to, yes, Anthony.
So I know that Brian kind of touched it there at the end when it comes to workplace community.
Mm-hmm.
I know most of you fairly well, and talking about finding community outside of the work environment. But do you have any advice for seniors in terms of finding a workplace, a job that has a good workplace community? Since at the end of the day, we're going to be spending most of our days with those people. And if you struggled in that, how have you overcome it?
Well, I guess. I think, I mean, obviously being in Front Royal and knowing so many people that do stay, it is a little easier to find that because you know people who work either in this particular job or in this particular industry. But starting right away, I mean, I think using the resources around you, like if you, especially depending on where you're going, figure out where, as Mary Clare said, like figure out where you're, like the churches you're going to go to, and then like meeting people, especially in the yeah, I guess for every parish there's going to be a little bit of a Catholic bubble, but like knowing the people there so that you can, know where they work, but then also just know or try and think about what you want to do. And if you know what you want to do, I think depending on what that is, it's going to look really different for like a lot of people. So like working in politics, it can be a little harder to find that. I mean, I'd imagine even in like working for conservative people, I feel like there's going to be a wide spectrum of the people that you work with. So I think knowing what you want to do and trying to find that is a good starting point, but then also just kind of, I think just acknowledging that it's not going to be like Christendom and the, like you're not, I mean, maybe you're blessed to have this, but well, I feel like I kind of am right now, but the people that you work with are not all going to be super strong in their faith, as it seems that everyone here is. And I only say seems just because I think we all struggle and we all get into hard parts of the spiritual life and everything like that. But yeah, just, I mean, acknowledging that it may not be as you want it, but you're getting you're making the foundation here. And even if it means that the people around you aren't, at where you work, are not going to be the most virtuous, or even, I mean, thinking about the right things or talking the right way, I mean, you can be, sounds cliche, but you can be the light in their life, maybe in small ways. So yeah, I think it definitely depends on where you want to start working, like the industry, I mean, and then so be realistic about what that's going to look like. But then, yeah, just knowing, especially, I'm also pretty amazed with the alumni network. Yeah, Mr. Christ has a lot of, and both you guys really have a lot of people who either are affiliated with Christendom or graduated from Christendom that are working in a lot of different industries. So, like, take advantage of the resources you have now, like at Christendom. So yeah, that's all I would say.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, that's a lot, but.
That's all right. Other questions? Yes.
This is probably true.
So, that being said, what would you say for keeping standards for dating high when you do Christendom? Because Christendom's a place which has very high standards. So how would you still keep those standards while, like, still being patient and, yeah, waiting for the right person?
That's such a great question. I'm going to use the cop-out and say, pray and talk to God about it, because he's the best matchmaker and he knows who you need best. I'll leave it there.
That's very good. Okay. In the interest of time and the fact that you all have midterms and you all have taken time out of studying and all the preparations that you have to do for spring break to be here, we will end here, but they will hang out for a little bit if you wanted to come talk to any of them. I really appreciate you coming out in this incredibly, incredibly busy week. So give our guests a round of applause. I appreciate what they can share.